If you've created a certain experience in your life, good, bad, or ugly, then that also presupposes that you can create something better.
What is it that you think prevents people from taking charge of their life and their health?
The first step really in change is to become aware of your programs and patterns in thinking. Many people come from a fix me, you heal me, you help me, you get my life back on track. It also comes down to how we've been programmed and conditioned from early childhood. And then it's also about taking responsibility. Perception is projection. What we see in others has to be a reflection of ourselves. So the people that you love and adore, they're a reflection of you, and isn't that wonderful? The people that you maybe not quite so much love and adore, they're also a reflection of you. This is the beauty of triggers. If you can reframe when you're triggered, that it's actually an opportunity to look within, and it's an opportunity for self-growth. We love to be a victim on the effect side of the equation. It's not my fault, blame the traffic, blame this, blame that. However, the degree to which you're blaming others is the degree to which you're choosing to be helpless. So if you're going to get back in the driver's seat of life, then it's about taking responsibility and noticing where and what triggers you, and that's an opportunity to look within. And again, starting to change those programs, those patterns that you're operating from. You can't solve a problem from the same dimensional level that it was created.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. Our DNA has extraordinary potential embedded within it, but many people don't utilize its full capacity. According to my guest, Dr. Carol Talbot, societal conditioning and environmental toxins have degraded our DNA and limited human evolution. In today's interview, Dr. Carol will unveil the original dormant blueprint within us, a potential for personal growth and transformation. A master of transformation, a catalyst for change, and a guide for those ready to awaken their highest potential. My guest in this episode is Dr. Carol Talbot. As the founder and creator of the Possibility Hub, Dr. Carol is a passionate advocate for expanding consciousness and unlocking the superhuman abilities inherent within us all. With a PhD in Quantum Morphogenetic Science, her pioneering research on DNA, bioregenesis, and source feeding is reshaping our understanding of human potential. A master Firewalk instructor, NLP master trainer, and author of Reimagine You, Dr. Carol is here to inspire us to push beyond perceived boundaries and embrace new possibilities. During our conversation, Dr. Carol will guide us with practical insights and experience to help us remember our true nature. Through ancient practices and shifts in mindset, she will show us how to nourish ourselves and energize so that we can access higher ways of being and living in the world. Hello, Dr. Carol. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm really good. Glad to be here, Celine.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. You're actually quite a well-known figure in Dubai. I've actually seen you at events dating as far back as the early 2000s. I've seen you speak. And I was always struck by your extensive knowledge and your vivacious energy. And it's just great to finally have the chance to actually sit with you and have this chat. So I'm glad that you're here.
Well, going back that far, yes, it reminds me how long I've been in this part of the world, and I still love it.
Obviously, your background and expertise, it's prolific, and it seems like you have this gift of blending modern scientific advancements with timeless wisdom. So I'd like to start out by learning more about your experiences that have influenced your methods for coaching, for enhancing human potential, and just encouraging individuals to embrace the power that's within them.
I feel that's really, I should credit my mother and my upbringing. I was very blessed with my childhood in terms of having free rein to explore. And I've also been blessed with a love of learning. I absolutely adore learning. And we were talking about some of the things that we learned a long, long time ago before we started this conversation. So I've read thousands and thousands of books. I've done lots and lots of courses. I always say all the ologies and eripes. In fact, with a lot of my friends, I was a bit of a joke. If I was going away, they'd say, oh, off on another fix, because it was never a holiday. It was always a course or an experience. So I've just loved learning. And with that in mind, I've had the opportunity to study with some of the most incredible teachers, often left of center teachers. And, you know, the ones that you probably wouldn't find if you Google searched or anything like that. So I've been very lucky. And at the time when I was going through all these ologies and eripes, maybe it was frustrating because I was a seeker-searcher and you're looking for something. Now, if I'm doing another course, and I am, it's often now for the pleasure of learning. And nothing gives me greater joy than when you come across new information that's, you know, a little bit different. And it's like, it nourishes me in so many different ways on so many different levels. So I guess that's what's guided me to be where I am now. And also being that seeker-searcher and with a high degree of skepticism. I was always looking for what would work, not just for me, that would give me those wow experiences, but being a sort of teacher, trainer, facilitator, also helping other people and supporting them. So coming from the side that one size doesn't fit all, that we need lots of different types of tools.
That's very important.
And I've also come from the side of the equation which is very much looking at ologies and eripes that are do with rather than do to. So I've never been one of those people that goes, fix me, and leaves myself in somebody else's hands. And even though I'm not a big fan of allopathic medicine, as we were speaking about before, if I ever did go to a doctor, I'd always say, well, what are you giving me? What does that do? Yeah. Why? How does it work? Rather than just, you know, going with what I was told. It's always, I like to be involved in the process. And I feel that's also very powerful for people because it means that if you've created a certain experience in your life, good, bad, or ugly, and if it's ugly or bad, then that also presupposes that you can create something better. So that's the model I come from.
Oh, I love that. And what is it that you think prevents people from taking charge of their life and their health? Because you've been training people for a couple of decades now. So based on your experience, how do people get in the way, and why is it difficult for them to kind of have that independent mind that you have and realize that it is their responsibility to figure out what works for them rather than just being passive and just taking in whatever it is that is kind of in the zeitgeist or what is popular, so to speak?
I feel that people would love, well, wouldn't we all, somebody else to do it for us. You know, it comes from what I just said. Many people come from a fix me, you heal me, you help me, you get my life back on track, rather than taking responsibility. It also comes down to how we've been programmed and conditioned right from early childhood. You know, we have the conscious mind, which a nice way of thinking of that is like a computer screen or a keyboard. Information appears and we respond and react to that information. It's also analytical and it's judgmental as well as reactive. However, that screen and that keyboard can't work unless it's connected to a hard drive. The hard drive is essentially your unconscious mind, which is like a recording and playback device. It forms the habit mind, except it's a lot more powerful than the conscious mind. Now, your unconscious mind is also responsible for all learning, all behavior, and all change. So this comes down to your question, why is change so challenging? Well, everything hits the unconscious level first. So even the now that we are experiencing right now actually registered at the unconscious level at least half a second ago. Now, that seems like nothing and may seem like something I just made up. It actually came from 15 years of research by a neuroscientist called Benjamin Liebe. Why is it important to us? Well, the metaphor that I often share with people is if you're driving along and you get cut up in traffic, highly likely here, you get angry, you get stressed, and let's say 20 minutes later you calm down and you say to yourself, you know, the next time that happens, I'm just going to stay calm and in control. That's consciously what you tell yourself. 20 minutes later, you get cut up in traffic and immediately you get stressed and angry again. How come? Because the information hits the unconscious level first, and you respond and react based on the programs and patterns that you've got stored on your hard drive, so to speak. So unless you're able to start recognizing those programs and patterns at the unconscious level and either upgrading them, deleting them, installing new programs and patterns, then you're basically just a conditioned response machine. And that means that you're only probably operating from conscious awareness about less than 5% of the time, and that's being very, very generous. So the first step really in change is to become aware of your programs and patterns in thinking. And then it's also about taking responsibility. And so when I work with groups or individuals, they're heavily tasked, you know, because I can open the door, and I know from the programs I used to run, the NLP certification programs, I still get people coming up to me saying, "You changed my life."
Wow.
I did not. I may have facilitated the experience. I opened the door to new possibilities. They had to choose to walk through. They had to do the work. So in those programs, there was pre-study. There was an open book test. They had to sort of make sure they had undeniable experiences, both as a practitioner and as a client. So whether I'm working with groups or individuals, there's always an element of tasking. And to me, the degree to which people do the tasking is the degree to which they'll get the results that they want. So that's the people I like to work with, who are ready to take responsibility for results, because nobody else can do it for you.
So true. But sometimes these patterns are deeply embedded in us, and it's been driving us for years. I mean, how do we actually come to terms with that? Because I know when I see the unsavory parts of me, it usually comes out when I'm triggered and when things are not going my way. And I intellectually, rationally, I'm aware that I'm not being myself and I'm being driven by some unhealthy pattern within me. So for someone who notices that in the moment, what can they do to kind of prevent it from escalating and making a situation worse?
Well, one of the frames I always use with people is perception is projection. You know, what we see in others has to be a reflection of ourselves. So the people that you love and adore, they're a reflection of you, and isn't that wonderful? The people that you maybe not quite so much love and adore, they're also a reflection of you. So this is the beauty of triggers. If you can reframe when you're triggered, that it's actually an opportunity to look within, and it's an opportunity for self-growth. And rather than, again, we go into the blame culture. We love to be a victim on the effect side of the equation. It's not my fault, blame the traffic, blame this, blame that. However, the degree to which you're blaming others is the degree to which you're choosing to be helpless. So if you're going to get back in the driver's seat of life, then it's about taking responsibility and noticing where and what triggers you, And that's an opportunity to look within and again starting to change those programs, those patterns that you're operating from. And this is the beauty that, I think it was Einstein who said you can't solve a problem on the same level it was created. However, I take that one step further. You can't solve a problem from the same dimensional level that it was created. And again, when you start to realize the magnificence of who you are, not just beyond this physical form, and that there are portions of your consciousness stationed at the soul level, the oversoul, the avatar, the rishi, the bodhaya level, all the way to source and your connection to source, then you start to realize how brilliant you are and understand that those triggers, as I said, are beautiful. It's like you're playing in a game that gives you an opportunity for more self-awareness about you. Now, admittedly, Celine, when you do get triggered, it's nice to have a quick mumble, grumble, groan and complain.
That's right.
And then a quick slap. And it's like, okay, what do I see in them? How is that reflected in me? And it's not always obvious. Sometimes you need to put on different observational glasses. And this is where sometimes it's nice to have a mentor or somebody else who can support you and see your own backside, so to speak, and give you a different perspective so you can get back on track.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you take a holistic view on our body and our whole system. And I think one of the reasons why this is so important is because our thoughts actually infuse energy into our DNA and our cells. You actually say that in your book, Reimagine You. And I'd love for you to tell us more about that. Like, why is it that our mind has such a deep impact on our body and, just our energetic system?
So if you consider from the moment we're born, we're given a name, we're handed a script, we're handed a set of beliefs. We're also sent to school and taught a history that may or may not be true. So we're placed in a very limited paradigm. We're conditioned to think in certain ways, to see the world in a specific way. So that means we're also kept in a certain energy frame. And as you know, everything in this universe is energy, from the chair that I'm sitting on, from the physical form, and energy is the building blocks of matter. But energy also is our thoughts, it's our emotions. And, if you think about it, all organisms read energy. But as human beings, we've got a little bit lazy about that. So, when we
you and my dog can read my energy.
Yeah, so, when you walk into a room, you kind of go, oh, good energy, bad energy. And from meeting certain people, you have that. And actually, if you're seeing color, you're seeing energy. If you're hearing my voice, it's all energy oscillating at a specific frequency. Now, as I said, we're placed in a particular paradigm, so we're limited in how much we can see and how much we can hear, and almost taught and told what to see and what to hear. How does that impact our outside reality? Well, if you're thinking the same thoughts and again and again and again, it's creating a kind of morphogenetic field where you've probably heard about cell biologist Rupert Sheldrake said, when individuals of a species get together, it forms a group mind.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But the same, when a group of thoughts come together, it creates a cluster of those thoughts that then come down into a physical reality. Mm-hmm. But then we go back into what you asked about DNA. How does this fit into our DNA? Well, DNA is far more than just to do with our physiological form. Mm. It's multidimensional, and it's like an antenna. It's a transmitter and receiver of consciousness, of frequency. Mm-hmm. Right now, 90% of the stream of consciousness that should be available to us is turned off. It's like having a dimmer switch turned down to a faint glow. We're not operating as we should. So it's like having a symphony and just having one or two instruments. The harmonics that you're going to play are a little bit poor. Yeah. As you bring more of your DNA on stream, more harmonics, more instruments, your life starts to open up. So another way of thinking about this is as a film strip. Mm-hmm. And if you put a film strip into a projector, light comes in, hits the film strip. Now, if there's glitches on that film strip, then what gets projected on the outer screen also has glitches in it.
Okay.
Now, your DNA has distortions in it. It has distortions over, if you understand our true cosmic history, through digressed races, but also through the toxins that we eat, and also through the thoughts and the emotional toxins that we take in, means our DNA is not operating as it should, which means when the small fraction of consciousness does come in, its DNA projects your reality onto the outside world. And if there's glitches in your DNA, just like if there's glitches on the film, your outer reality is impacted. And for us as humans right now, it reflects as physical dis-ease, emotional discomfort, our reality is distorted, mental challenges. It impacts our world. So do thoughts matter? Yes, because they impact the DNA, and it's our DNA that has a huge correlation on our reality. Distortions in your DNA means there's going to be distortions in your outer world. As you repair and bring more of your DNA online, more consciousness can come in. You begin to remember who you really are, back to that magnificent brilliance that you are. And your outer reality begins to change. The way you see things, the way you hear things, you have a higher level of discernment. So going back to that programming and conditioning right from childhood, from giving that script, those beliefs, you start to challenge what you've been taught and told. You start to challenge where people say that's impossible. So, for example,
I was going to ask you, can you give us...
I'm a master Firewalk instructor, so I teach people to walk across burning hot coals.
I love Firewalks. I've done it once with Tony Robbins.
Yeah, so it's a very powerful event.
It is.
So you're going to walk across coals that are about 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. People usually say, why do we need more Firewalkers in the world?
I was the same, yes.
However, when you walked across those coals, I'm really, really certain that when you walked across unharmed, it begs the question, if I can do that, what else have I been taught and told?
Yeah,
that's
definitely
not
felt
true?
that massive shift.
So if you think about your neurons wiring and firing in a specific way, it's like a plug in a socket. It quickly unplugs those neurons, and then they can rewire in a new way, so that you start to question your reality and what you've been taught and told. And these blow your mind kind of experiences, like firewalking or arrow breaks, board breaks, those blow your mind experiences open the door to new possibilities. And this is where also chaos theory comes in, because often it's chaos that creates the shift.
Tell us more about that.
So if you think about times in your life when you've had maybe a physical fall, and I'm thinking of your finger right now.
Yes, my finger.
The finger.
The massive injury I had in the gym 2 days ago.
Or maybe you've experienced an emotional crash, or many people it'll be a financial crash, or we think of what went on in the world several years ago. Everything crumbles. Your reality crumbles in some way. And you can't go back to the way things were, which means that you come back in a whole new way with a whole new viewpoint on life. So this is where, it's where we say chaos creates evolution. And actually the field of cymatics shows how that happens. So cymatics shows us how frequency, we go back to energy, impacts matter. So and you can see this if you Google or YouTube, you have a metal tray, put some sand or salt on the metal tray, key in a frequency, and that sand or salt will go into chaos momentarily, and then it aligns with a new frequency. Turn up the frequency, it goes back into chaos, and then it aligns with the new frequency. So if you think about it, in times in your life where your reality crumbles in some way, it allows you to evolve in a whole new way, in a whole new level.
If you are able to take in that experience in a healthy way, I guess, and process it in a way that would lead to growth, right? Because not everyone they don't respond in a way that would be beneficial to them. They might crash, they might get addicted to things. So how can we avoid going down that path of destruction? Because these really difficult events, these crisis events that shake us up, can really bring us down and make us really get stuck in those really destructive patterns.
Well, then we go into time and space, and we go back to the thoughts. Because again, if you're on the cause side of the equation rather than being a victim, it goes back to what I said. If you've created a reality out of harmony, more in dissonance, and you don't like it, you cannot change it when you're operating from the same energy.
Okay.
So shifting your energy changes things. However, going back to the sand on the metal tray, it goes into chaos. Sometimes it feels worse rather than better. So think of times in your life when you kind of like decide to clean out a cupboard. And you're in halfway through and you think, I wish I hadn't started. And you have that choice whether just to cram everything back in or to keep going. And if you keep going, then it all becomes pristine again in a whole new way because you've emptied things out. And so it is. Sometimes we need to empty out our thoughts. And I go back to, I've spent thousands and thousands in my own personal development. As I told you, I love learning. Yeah. So, every year I used to plan going to see another or do another course or another teacher, another trainer. And I remember this is a long, long time ago. I'd been back and forth to the west coast of the States so many times that year for a learning and development program that happened over a number of modules. And at the end of it, I looked at my notebook and I'd hardly written any notes. I didn't feel that there wasn't much that I hadn't heard before.
Okay.
And I know that sounds a little bit less than humble.
No, I know what you mean.
My mind was full.
I know what you mean.
My mind was full.
Yeah.
And so I decided, okay, I need to empty out. And instead of going on one of those programs where I'm taking copious notes, except I wasn't, let me have experiences. And so I started I went on some extraordinary journeys and met some extraordinary tribes and things that, again, shook things up.
Yes.
So going back to your question, it's, unfortunately, most of us want to go back to the way things were.
Yeah.
So a quick example, the other week, I love going hiking. For me, it's a form of nourishment. I nourish my system in many ways away from just physical food. And it was 5 a.m, road was dark, and there was this huge sheet of metal on the road. And it ripped underneath my car, and it ripped the fuel tank.
Oh.
And all the fuel of a fuel tank, out it came. And I love my car, really. And I like the freedom that having a car gives you.
Yes.
And so, I was without a car. And my initial thought was, what do I, do I hire a car? What a nuisance, because you want things to be just the same, whether I'm using the car or not. I want to know that it's outside and I can.
Yeah.
Do I have a bicycle? Yes. Can I walk here? Yes.
That accessibility.
It's just that having things the way that you like them disrupts. So, as I said, this is again going back to chaos. It's disruptive. However, it fuels the shift. So sometimes we have to shake things up and do things differently. And sometimes we have to be kicked up the arse and nudged. And sometimes we need to do it ourselves. If we're not happy in our outer reality, then it's how can we start cleaning up our DNA? And also, when I mentioned it's about time and space, it's looking back in the past, because you may have changed your thinking patterns and your behavior right now, except going back to the script that we were handed, our upbringing, our culture, our heritage, and the thought patterns that are there in the ethers may still be activating, because it takes, we're in a particular time and space reality where it takes time to go from one side of the room to the other. So time and space go together. And it takes time, if we set ourselves an intention, for that to appear and manifest in the outer world. We have to clear the dregs.
Yes.
It's like you can't keep sort of, if you've gone through all the plates in your kitchen, then sooner or later you're going to have to wash up.
Absolutely.
So you have to wash up your thoughts. And sometimes people get disheartened because they don't see an immediate shift. Mm-hmm. But the cleaner you are physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, the cleaner your DNA is, the quicker you see things manifest in your outer reality.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, we do not see a correlation between our thoughts and our outer reality because of that time-space continuum. And isn't it good, Celine, can you imagine if you manifested every single thought instantly? It'd be oh, no, I didn't mean that. No, I'm not that.
You would be like a sorcerer or something.
Yes,
just
it's
like a genie.
Yes. And yet there is genius within us all.
Yes.
When we understand the gifts that we've been given, and we also understand that we're playing in a game realm.
Yeah.
They talk about the holographic nature of reality, and that we can actually, you can't prove anything outside of yourself, because our entire world is experienced through our nervous system and our 5 senses.
Yes.
So that's how we play in this holographic game. And I know sometimes when things are not quite as I look, I think, okay, if I consider it as a game, then how do I want to play in the game? Mm-hmm. And you think of the amount of people who are playing games on computers and in virtual reality, and they can get very immersed, but deep down they know it's a game. What if we're wearing virtual reality and we've got so immersed we've forgotten who we truly are? And as I said, as more of your DNA comes on stream, as you allow more of that consciousness in, you are able to see things for what they are, people for who they are. Frequency doesn't lie. Sound doesn't lie. Light can be deceptive. Frequency, sound doesn't lie.
Okay.
So if you listen, truly listen, when somebody is speaking or when you're listening to certain music, you'll find the truth. It'll resonate with you. And if you go back in history, of course, you know that a lot of our music is distorted.
Yes.
And has things underneath. There's a wonderful series of books called Musical Truths by a DJ called Mark Devlin, who started to get concerned about the messages in music, and also when they changed the frequencies of the music from pure tone.
Wow.
But again, think about when you're listening to somebody talk, where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Often, and I know I was the same, we're speaking in our head. And when you're speaking in your head, when you're trying to think, what am I going to say next? Then it has more of a tinny quality. But as you drop it more into your heart or into your gut, it has more resonance, more fullness. And it's almost, you can feel a vibration in your chest. You can feel that frequency. And it goes back to what I said about all organisms read energy. When you walk into a room and go, oh, bad vibe, good vibe.
Yeah.
It's remembering who you are and that you have these additional senses to sense what's going on in a room when something's off.
Yeah.
But most of us like to ignore.
Yeah, we just don't know how to tune in as well. We have to be, it sounds like you're someone who's ultra sensitive and you have these extra sensory abilities, but not everyone has that, And so what would your advice be for people who really want to have that ability to perceive the frequency around them? Like what can they do to get to that level?
Silence, stillness, stasis, solitude. At times we all need that to switch off from everything. And I think from my book, I went into a darkroom retreat.
Yes, you did.
As one of my experiences. It was also a breatharian source feeding
tell us more
experience.
About that.
So in the darkness, and when I talk about darkness, I mean complete and utter darkness. You can't see your hand in front of your face.
Okay.
And so you have no idea after a while whether your eyes are open or closed. And yet you learn to navigate when one of your most important senses is taken away. Other things come in. Also, other things happen to you physically. So first thing, huge amounts of melatonin are released in your system. And we know that melatonin is responsible for helping you sleep.
Yep.
So I always think of it's Mel that puts you to bed, and it's Sarah, serotonin, that wakes you up in the morning. A nice way of remembering it.
That's a good one. I'm going to use that.
But of course, in the dark, you've got huge amounts of melatonin being released. Here's the other thing about melatonin. Melatonin is also involved in the repair of over 100 genes involved in DNA damage. Or if your DNA is damaged, then melatonin steps in to help repair the genes that are involved in that scenario, kind of thing. So when you're in the dark for extended periods, it's funny, when you're in the dark, you also want to be more still because you can't see anything. So you move slowly.
Yes.
You don't want to speak so loudly. So it turns you within. And a lot of people also go on
silent retreats.
Retreats, Vipassana and things like that.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful opportunity to get back in touch with who you are, what you stand for. And so if you think about it, society bombards us with noise and sound everywhere. You go to a shopping mall, there's music. You go into every single shop has got different music. You go into a restaurant, there's loud music or a band. Everywhere there is noise, designed to keep your senses outwards rather than inwards. And most people will have had that experience where they'll have done something and they'll say, "And I knew I shouldn't." There was that little voice inside me. And that's there to just say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm here," when you're ready to listen. And the more you start to listen, the more guidance, insights you'll receive. And look, Celine, one of the reasons that I was such a seeker-searcher was I desperately wanted to be clairvoyant, clairaudient, and all those things, telepathic, everything.
Don't we all? Yeah.
And
that's like a superpower.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, am I clairvoyant, clairaudient? I am more what's called a knower. So I know when things are off and on. And I never appreciated what a gift that was. As opposed to when you see a lot of things, when you hear, you have to wade through all that information in order to find the truth in it. Because you may be given or gifted an image, however, you don't know what it relates to, or what the symbolism was. Or you may hear certain sounds, but who or what is it talking about? So that there has to be an interpretation. And of course, the interpretation comes based on your conditioning and programming and what you were taught and told in your childhood. And, unless you start to question it. So I remember with one of my mentors, one of my teachers, it was challenging. It was a month-long program. You're going to laugh. I walk on fire.
Yes.
It was to teach us to walk on water. Yes. Did I succeed? No, I sank every single time. However, we were doing lots of other things and activations during that month-long program.
That sounds a little bit out there, I have to admit.
I told you I like those out there things. So this teacher was extraordinary. Most of the people on that program were clairvoyant in some way, or very, what I called, gifted. And then there was me. And I found it really challenging because my teacher treated me like teacher's pet. She treated me like a star pupil, and I felt very less than everybody else with all their amazing gifts. Yet, I thank her now because at that time, I didn't see or know or understand the gift and gifts that I've been given as you remember who you are. And that, when you start to remember who you are and repair your DNA and that stream of consciousness comes in, things open up in a whole new way. Mm-hmm. And that's when your intuition, your guidance, you have access to you in different timelines, on different levels of consciousness. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful the way that that comes in. And for many people, it starts with just having that opportunity to be still, to be silent, to be alone with and solitude. And so many people find it challenging to be with themselves.
Say, I
need to have the TV on. I need to be with people.
I know several people like that, Dr. Carol. I mean, they're afraid of the dark, or they associate it with death. Strangely,
yes.
This complete. I love silence. Like, I could sit in silence for, like, it would not be a problem for me. But I know people who find that absolutely unacceptable. Like, they would go crazy. So I think that would really prevent them from getting to that place that you're talking about, where you can allow all those messages to come in and your intuitive ability to flourish.
And, we go through different stages in life. I've been in this part of the world a long time. Did I party my little heart out? Yes.
You were a dancer, right?
I was a semi-professional dancer in my day, which is why I still love, yoga. But I also do aerial and the performing arts with hoop, and I love it. It challenges me.
It looks fun.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, and in all ways. You feel like you're part of a Cirque du Soleil act, so it satisfies me. Again, another form of nourishment.
Yeah.
And this is where silence and that stillness and solitude is, when you can hear the whispers. You can hear the whispers. And that's when those insights start pouring in magnificent ways. So, when people say the answers are within, they really are. And sometimes we need those triggers, people holding up mirrors. We need other people to sometimes help us see our genius, our brilliance, how magnificent we are.
And does it help to have a coach, a mentor, even a community around us who can mirror that back to us? Because sometimes we can't see that, right? We have our blind spots, or we just don't really believe in ourselves so much. We need someone to kind of, like that teacher who kind of helped you see your gifts and was putting the spotlight on you. We do need someone like that, don't we?
Yes, and it should be somebody who can reflect it back to you, and going back to the responsibility for the results lies with you. You have to be willing to take it on board, and you have to be willing to, as I said, I'm blessed. I've loved learning.
Yeah.
And I love coming across information that's very different. And as you do that, you find yourself, the most incredible synchronicities. I mean, my degree is in Quantum Morphogenetic Physics and Science, but again, how that came about was that teacher I told you about. I went on the month-long program to learn to walk on water. When I came back, there was a talk going on at one of the centres here. And I thought, oh, that looks interesting. I wonder if it has anything to do with the course I've just been on. Anyway, went there, and I walked in just a few minutes later. It just started. And as soon as I sat down, I got bing, bing, bing. There's something for you to learn here. And you need to mentor with this person. So I went back to see this person the next day. And he knew the teacher that I'd been with for a month. And he said he used to be her promoter. And he knew the work that she'd done. Now, he took a call during our little talk together. And when he took his call, he said, oh, just look through this manual. He handed me a manual, and I thought, this looks like a manual that my mum showed me several years previously. 20 years earlier, my mother had been on a course, and for some reason, she kept this manual. It was a very complicated manual, lots of diagrams and things. And she said, take a look at this, see what you think. Because she knew I was interested in all sorts of things weird and wonderful. Anyway, I flicked through it. But when he handed me this manual, it rang a bell. So I rushed home, called Mum, and said, what's that manual? She showed it to me. His name was on it.
Wow.
My mother had been on a course with him and his then wife 20 to 25 years earlier. So I started mentoring with him, learning about Keylontic science, which is where Quantum Morphogenetic Physics comes in. And then through somebody else, somebody who'd been on my course years earlier, introduced me to someone else who sent me something that looked, and you just follow the dots, follow the lines. And then, the last 4 or 5 years, I've been studying quantum morphogenetic physics and science to get my PhD. And as I said, understand our true cosmic history, who we really are, our magnificence. And then, of course, my PhD was on bioregenesis of the human DNA blueprint through source feeding, which is the breatharian path, which is really a spiritual initiation.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to move to. But I just want to acknowledge the amazing synchronicity in your experience.
It was beautiful. I didn't see it at the time.
I love it when things like that.
Puzzle.
Yeah, I love it when things like that happens, because it kind of affirms that this is supposed to be on your path, and you need to take notice of it. And yeah, that's always amazing. It's like, someone up there kind of giving you a nod. Yeah, that's
if
right.
She doesn't get it, then make sure her mother goes on this 25 years earlier. And if she still doesn't get it, make sure she goes, it's like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. So I think people need to pay attention to those synchronicities, because that could be a massive clue for them. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. So let's talk about bioregenesis, because that is the heart of your book. At the heart of your book, Reimagine You. You describe it as an innovative method for rejuvenating our DNA blueprint, which we have kind of been talking about quite a bit so far. So I'd love for you to tell us more about that. What is bioregenesis and its significance?
We're in an age where biohacking and longevity is very much the, what's of interest to people today. So biohacking is, again, optimizing our system, and it's usually done through nutrition, supplements, fitness, trackers, devices, technology. Bioregenesis, on the other hand, comes from the thought that we can regenerate ourselves, that our cells have cell memory. They remember who we truly are if we get back to the DNA and repair it. So it goes deeper than biohacking. It's going with the body's inherent ability to heal itself. And look, we go back to your hurt finger.
Yeah, my hurt finger.
And I've got quite a few cats at the moment and another rescue kitten. So if I get scratched, I don't think twice about that, because I know in a week or so it'll be gone. And you know that this will heal, that you don't really have to do very much for it, that your body has the innate intelligence. It knows what to do.
Yep.
And it also goes back to, with the source feeding, the breatharian path. If you think about it, when you're sick, when you're ill, you don't want to eat. It's other people who say, you need to eat, you must eat, you must eat. Mm-hmm. But actually, when you're unwell, your body wants to rest from all food. And what does it do? It gets on and it repairs itself. Unfortunately, though, because of the distortions in our food, our water supply, in the air, and the distortions in our DNA, our body is not able to heal the way that it should. And this is also where, dry fasting comes in. And of course, we're in Ramadan right now. With dry fasting, 1 day of dry fasting is equal to 3 days of water fasting, because with dry fasting, what happens is you start to release your own endogenous water, your own natural living water from your fat cells. And whereas if you're water fasting, the body still has to deal with the toxins in the water, no matter how pure the water. Mm-hmm. There's, the microplastics and often there's lead and arsenic in our water supplies as well.
Yeah.
But with your own endogenous water, it's more palatable to the system. And then the longer you dry fast, then the stem cell crew start kicking in. Your body does what it does best. There's actually loads of research coming out of Russia on this in terms of a doctor called Dr. Sergei Filanov. He actually takes people on 7 and 11-day dry fasts.
Wow.
Now, again, fasting is different from what I'm doing because fasting, you're still dependent on food and water, so it's not sustainable long term.
Yes.
However, what the dry fasting and research on dry fasting does prove is bioregenesis.
Yeah.
It allows the body to do what it does best. It kickstarts it to remember that it has natural healing abilities. So it's allowing your body to get on with it rather than putting more toxins in, which is what we tend to do. And here's the other thing. The most important thing here is that your cells have energy. Your cells, to repair the DNA and to repair your body and to heal you, your cells do not directly get energy from the food that you eat. It has to go through a very, very complicated process to make ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And if you think about most of the food that we eat and the toxins in the food, so it's only squeezing a little ATP out of it, and then that ATP, that energy it does get, goes to dealing with the toxins that were in your food. Not only that, but the food that we eat, if we go back to energy, it has an energy signature from where it was grown, how it was grown, who picked it, how it was picked, how it was cooked, how it was handled. That energy signature is blending with your own energy signature and either helping you or harming you. So from my model of the world, I decided for my thesis to start experimenting with source feeding, nourishing myself in another way. And there are many levels to consider. So I should also say this is not a path for everybody.
That's what I was going to say, right?
It's a spiritual initiation. And when I talk to
if they have underlying
groups,
health conditions or something like that, I mean, they should use their discretion.
Oh, look, they should
use their discretion. I have to say that, everybody.
Yes, this is a spiritual initiation, and it's not for everyone.
Yes.
And there are different levels to consider.
Okay.
So I'm what's called a level 3 breatharian. So do I eat? Sometimes, yes.
Okay. When you say sometimes, how often are we talking?
I usually have a main meal once a week or once every couple of weeks.
Really?
I drink diluted juice. I like a cup of tea. I love hummus. I'll have a spoonful of hummus here and there. I like chocolate, so maybe I'll have a piece of chocolate with a cup of tea. Because we miss taste and we mistake texture. However, I know that if I go hiking or I'm having a nourishing conversation with you, that's nourishing me in many different ways. So what I like to get people to think about is to think about nourishment in other ways rather than just what's on your plate. Because are you eating because it's lunchtime, breakfast time, dinner time?
I mean, that's what we've been taught, right?
Or are you eating because you want love, because you're depressed, because you're happy, or because it's social? There are so many, what are you really hungry for? So it's getting people to think a little bit more that there are other ways to nourish themselves. Like, how nourishing is it when you hear your favorite song come on and it's like, oh my goodness, I've got to move.
Yeah, when you go on a nice holiday, I can go on for the whole day and not eat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's
I know
nourishing.
exactly what you're talking about.
So I'm not advocating my path. I'm advocating reimagining nourishment, what nourishes you. So for me, you heard how excited I was about aerial hoop classes.
Yeah.
Love it. It nourishes me. I go hiking, nourishes me.
Yeah.
We already know that, and there's lots of research, that the sun is able to help us produce vitamin D and K.
Yes.
If the sun can do that, what else can it do? Yeah. But interestingly enough, what do? In sunlight, we put on sunscreen, and we wear sunglasses. We block it. Yet your body has its own innate intelligence to actually know when you've had enough sun, when you've absorbed enough nourishments. So we actually have been conditioned to turn off a lot of the ways to nourish ourselves. And in groups, when I ask them, why do you eat? Most of them say, for energy.
Yeah.
How many people, after they've eaten, go...
Yeah.
If I eat...
I cannot eat a heavy meal before a podcast interview because my brain will just...
you're kind of like...
Yeah. I won't be sharp. I just won't...
Exactly.
I won't be as articulate.
So I'm asking you, does it give you energy?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And most people feel more energized when they're having a great conversation, when they're, as I said, listening to music or dancing or absorbed in painting or art or doing something that they love.
Yeah.
That's where people say, oh, I forgot to eat. I was so absorbed in it. Of course, and your body's not starving. You were nourished in other ways. And as I said, there's also lots of research in terms of, maybe you've had the experience, Celine, where you've taken a glass of water, put it outside in the light to energize the water, and then you drink it.
Yes.
Well, if you think about it, instead of putting a glass out, our body is the container.
Yeah.
What are we contained with? 60 to 70% water.
That's right.
So even when we're outside, it's been proven. I think it's William Brown from the Resonance Academy and another professor from the University of Washington. He wrote a book called The Fourth Phase of Water that shows that, you know, when we're in light, our cells can absorb that light and it produces the energy for the cells to repair our DNA and repair our body. And there's so much other research.
Do you take supplements?
Do I take supplements? Occasionally,
okay.
But not very often. Whereas I
mean,
used
you
to
look
have,
healthy.
I used to
You
have
look
a whole
healthy.
cupboard full of supplements. It saves me so much money.
Yeah, I know. They are expensive.
And this is what I see is, you know, we now hear about supplements that I'd never heard of. You know, when I was a child, it was just, you know, your vitamin C, that was about it. But there's so many different supplements, and I see so much misinformation out there where you suddenly hear about this or that and you start taking that. But if you're only taking that in isolation, how does it mix with all the other minerals and other things that you're going on? So when people say, do I take supplements? Very, very occasionally. Very occasionally. And it'll be like, you know, a one-off, one day. That, you know, for me, again, it's tuning in. Where am I at? How do I feel?
Okay.
And you're right. If I do eat, and I'm very blessed, I have great friends, because I said to them, you know, it's my choice. Sometimes, please.
That could be a challenge when you're socializing.
Invite me. I may sit and just have a diluted juice.
Yes.
Or I may have a diluted soup.
Yeah.
Or a cup of tea. Or I may eat with you. Invite me, because I find that nourishing.
Yeah.
If I do partake, I have to rush straight home because I'm passed out.
Really? Wow.
It does not give me energy. It takes every last drop from me.
Interesting.
So it's been a very interesting journey, though, to monitor. You know, when I was on the Darkroom Breatharian program last year, I went on another one where we were dry fasting as well. And we had a 2-month protocol where only diluted juices or liquids for 2 months. No chewing, no using this muscle.
Wow, okay.
You know, because to retrain. And again, it's very interesting when you go to a food cupboard. For what purpose am I here? What am I hungry for? The conditioning, the programming. So it challenges so much. You learn so much about yourself when you study your eating habits and your food habits.
Yeah. My concern about source feeding is that we can teeter on, you know, the possibility of becoming malnourished or developing an eating disorder.
Yes.
How can we prevent that from happening?
Again, this is the conditioning, the beliefs, the programming of what's possible, what's not.
Okay.
You know, I've run firewalking events for over 20 years, Celine. I remember one person saying, it's impossible. I have got pictures, videos, I've done it hundreds of times myself, I've taken thousands of people through, and it was just not in her model of the world. It's called cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
And when you're programmed and patterned in a specific way, you cannot see it.
Okay.
And this is when we have, if we go full circle, those times in your life where there's maybe a financial collapse, emotional collapse, when your reality crumbles in some way. You go into chaos. But when your reality crumbles, you evolve in a whole new way, and it starts to open the door that you challenge some of the things that you've been taught and told.
Okay.
And we all go through this. You know, we've all gone through that stage where it's like, I know everything now. And then a few years later, it's like, oh, I can't believe I said that or did that. You know, you've gone to a whole new level. There's always more, because everything on this planet is either growing or dying.
Yes.
Which side of the equation do you want to be on? And I know I want to be on the growth one.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of our own evolution.
Okay. So for people listening to this and they're sort of interested in experimenting and giving this a go, source feeding and dry fasting, how do they go about it in a safe way?
They need to do it in a monitored way. As I said, this is not for everyone. I was a vegetarian for over 40 years, vegan, ate lightly for a long, long, long time.
So you kind of weaned into it.
I felt it was the next step in my spiritual evolution. To me, this is a spiritual initiation. It's not, to do as a fad. What people can do is intermittent fasting, cleansing. The amount of people who fast but don't cleanse themselves are parasites, which is a big issue for people. And so if you're fasting and you have parasites, then it's going to be very irritating. So there's incremental steps. However, what I've come to notice from the things that I've experienced, particularly the courses that I went on in the last couple of years, where none of the other people stayed with this path, it's not just physical detox. It's a mental detox. It's an emotional detox, as well as a physical detox. It's also a spiritual detox. There is such a lot of misinformation out there. And I see so many people spending so much money, promised a fix.
Yeah.
And this is where discernment comes in, and knowing what's right for you at what time in your life. So I would say to people, it's not just the physical detox. It's, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. It's starting to open up your life in a whole new way, going back to that DNA in the film strip. When your DNA has less distortions, then your outer reality starts to shift and change.
Yes.
And look, a lot of cleaning needs to go on many different levels to get to that stage. And that's also part of the dance. Rather than, I'd say, a journey, it's part of the dance. So sometimes we have to, know what we don't want before we get clear about what we do want.
Yes. And you mentioned that this is for you, this is a spiritual undertaking. And I do remember reading about holy men and holy women using fasting as a way to get to that next stage of evolution.
Yes.
In fact, you studied with shamans and in certain parts of the world, like Ecuador, Peru, and Mexico. And I'm wondering is that where you picked it up from? Because I was so intrigued by the fact that you actually ventured into that part of the world and actually embraced that form of wisdom and knowledge, because not everyone is open to that,
Look, you can get caught in different paths,
Yeah.
and some are dead ends and some are not. I'm lucky because I'm an explorer, and I love going in different directions. So I think I shared earlier, my mind was full. I needed to go on journeys and experiences. So I went to spend time with the Achua tribe in Ecuador. They're a dream culture. So they say if you're there, it's because they've dreamed you there. And I remember flying into the rainforest from Shell. And I burst into tears because you're going into the heart and lungs of the world. It's so pristine. And it was a pivotal experience, because what I saw and what I experienced didn't give me the answers I wanted. It sent me actually on a different quest, in a different direction. So even to the likes of when I was in Peru, just walking behind some other people, I heard a name and thought, oh, that's an interesting name. Went and Googled it, looked up, went on his courses for a while. However, that turned out to be a dead end. Yet, because of that, I met some other people. Again, the dots connect, the jigsaw puzzle. So did that start a different trajectory in my life when I stopped going on sit and listen and make notes courses to going on experiences? And I do both. Yes, it was a pivotal time. And it also opened up a whole new realm of different questions, And I'm grateful for all the different experiences I've had, that some turned out it was just to meet certain people who would introduce me to other people who would introduce me to other people.
Yeah.
So nothing is ever wasted.
Yeah.
Nothing is ever wasted. And, sometimes I've been on programs and courses where I thought, this isn't really for me.
Yeah.
And because I'm a, keynote speaker, I'm a teacher, I'm a facilitator, the beauty is you learn on different levels. So I can learn from the other delegates, I can learn from the facilitator or speaker, I can learn from being a student myself. I've got different levels, so even if it's not quite for me, then I can learn, well, what is it that you didn't get from that or you didn't like, and what else is there to learn?
Because that could inform your future decisions.
Exactly. So there's always something to learn.
That's vital, especially in this age of information overload. I mean, you go on TikTok, go on Instagram, everyone's a guru. Gen Z, they're just imparting knowledge like as if they've been living for 100 years. And it's just...
Celine, the problem there is...
I'm not throwing shade at them, but sometimes they do sound a bit preachy.
The challenge there, Celine, is they want followers.
That's true.
And rather than showing people that mirror, and it's in you.
Yeah.
You are that genius. You're the soul, you're the oversoul, the avatar, the rishi, the buddhaya. You're all of that and more.
Yeah.
So, yes, sometimes we need a little help to see that. However, it's you, it's all you.
Yeah.
And going back that actually you can't prove anything or anyone outside of yourself. I can't prove you exist. I can't prove this studio exists. This is all you. And isn't that magnificent? So again, rather than be a follower, start to step into your own brilliance. And that's, really, truly my message. Remember who you are, that brilliance. And that's the reason I also titled the book. Yeah, it has a long-winded title, Reimagine You, Bioregenesis, the DNA Blueprint Through Source Feeding. Yeah. However, the Reimagine You, there's a reason that I wanted that as the title, because whenever you say ing, I-N-G at the end, or I-N-E, this is the beauty of language, and you're a wordsmith as well, it takes you in.
Yes.
Also, reimagine presupposes, when it's that you're already it. Imagine has the word I am, or the two words I am, which are very powerful. And it also has the word magi, the magi.
Oh.
And of course we are the magi. So it had to be reimagine you, because you are the magi, you are the magician, you're the brilliance. It's all in you. Reimagine in. Condition in. Program in. So anytime you hear ing, it was funny, somebody was sending me some copy the other day, and he said, I'm rewording this. And I said, there's a reason that I've put ing at the end, and I'm using that verb tense, because it's ongoing and it takes people in. So
wow, I love the faith that you have in the human spirit, Dr. Carol. It's vital to remember our brilliance and our ability to manifest the life we want, especially in the age of AI, and where a lot of our focus is shifting on external sources to support us. I think we need to be reminded of our own brilliance and our potential.
Totally. And we go back to this IQ, EQ, SQ.
Yeah.
Now AI taking you further away from yourself. But there's one more intelligence. I know Howard Gardner talks a lot about, even physical intelligence and everything. But there's one more intelligence that encompasses all of that. Which is what I'm writing about. It's multidimensional intelligence, because that's the container for all the brilliance that we are, and it contains all of those.
Yes. Yes, you have to remember the fact that we have so many gifts as human beings, and we can all tap into that. So, and it's brilliant teachers like you who are here to guide us to unearth those gifts. So, Dr. Carol, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your light with us, sharing your wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to let everyone know that if you want to get a copy of Dr. Carol Talbot's book, Reimagine You, and if you want to explore her other books, because she has some other brilliant books, as well as her training sessions, her events, and her coaching programs, please head over to caroltalbot.me.